Well, hello there and welcome to the bedroom of the dollhouse for another reading from The Secret Language of Birthdays by Gary Goldschneider and Hugh Stelfers for March 30th, the day of Uncompromising Vision. That's right. And here at the top of the page is a visual representational image of the day of Uncompromising Vision. We have what appears to be the looks of, I would say, like a dog basket there. It's padded, it's a basket, but there's a mound in the center with what looks to be some kind of sprout from like the Voynich manuscript there, I would say. I don't know what kind of sprout that is. Does that speak to the day of Uncompromising Vision? Hey, maybe. It's somebody's vision, and they fulfilled it, I would say. That said, a lot of times these visual representational images are rather enigmatic. Can't make a whole lot of sense out of them. So I would say it's not altogether all too important. I just like folks to kind of see what's going on a page in front of me. That said, what is important here is it's March 30th, and so it's somebody's birthday. So if your birthday is March 30th, I just want to say happy birthday, all right? That's what's important. But if this video finds you late, well, then I just want to say I hope you had a happy birthday in that circumstance. That said, a lot of other folks like to join us randomly or more ideally to celebrate the birthday, and so if that's why you're here, I just want to say hello, welcome, and I hope you enjoy yourself. Now, before I dive in with the redirect, something I like to do around these here parts, this is the Diecast, all birthday broadcast, and like to roll some dice. That's right. Living up to the namesake, all right? So if you've been here before and you know the score, just skip ahead in the chapters if you want to get to the redirect. I'll be here rolling dice because I do so, more importantly, for synchronicity's sake. That's right. And here I rolled a 3 and a 5 for an 8. Now, what's synchronicity? Some of you are probably wondering. Well, my friends, as I often hear it told, maybe not often, but as I hear it told, the universe or the higher powers that be are often apt to put things in our path to help us manifest our goals or realize our aspirations. But a lot of times as we're getting on in this life, we got the blinders on to what's going on around us, all right? We might be very singular or narrow of focus as we get on with the commute or get onto the job, running errands if you like. So we might be apt to miss the things the universe is putting in our path. That's right. So this is a little bit of an exercise to help us drop those blinders and start recognizing those signs. But how do we do that? How do we recognize these signs? Well, we need something that's mutually agreed upon between us and the universe. That's right. Your daily numbers, if you like, all right? Now, that said, you don't have to go with the numbers I rolled for you. The intention is there, but it's probably advisable if you want to try this out to get your own set of dice so you can ascribe directional values to number sets as well as time limits with which to go in those directions. That said, once you've established all that, just pick out a place near and dear to your heart or maybe someplace you haven't explored before and then set out, all right? Like I said, drop those blinders, okay? You never know, outside of your numbers creeping up into your day, hey, you might start to see a little bit of a theme, all right? Let's go with the visual representational image that doesn't make a lot of sense. Padded baskets, if you like, all right? Or maybe sprouts that look like some plant you've never seen before. Something out of a manuscript that some people argue was written by aliens, all right? The Voynich manuscript there. I know that sounds a little bit harebrained, but you never know what's going to start creeping up in front of your path there. That said, it doesn't have to be that. It can be just about anything. So you got to be eagle-eyed and take everything in around you like a sponge because you never know when it's going to creep up later. All right. Now, why do I say that? Because as you're getting on with this journey, you know what? I would say that's a sign the universe is letting you know it's with you on your path. That said, maybe the first leg of this journey, you're not seeing a whole lot of anything, just the everyday goings on, right? That said, never fret, just kind of take things in stride, step back, maybe look around. Maybe you just so happen to notice you're in front of a building with, that's right, a 35 in the address or an 8, all right? I would take that as a sign you're on the right path, or maybe you should go inside that building. That's right. Take a little chance, but maybe go on, intuition, your better judgment. Maybe it's a store and you hop on in there and what is it? Hey, maybe it's a plant store, all right? And they got a bunch of seedlings and sprouts there for plants that you're not sure about, all right? If we were to lean into the visual representational image, all right? That said, maybe the person behind the desk says, hey, how can I help you today? Just tell them what you're doing there, as weird as it sounds, all right? Take a chance here. Show them your dice. Maybe show them this video. Just tell them, hey, I'm here on account of synchronicity. Not in the market to really buy anything. They're apt to say, I have no idea what you're talking about, or it's crazy, all right? And you're probably apt to agree with them. That said, hey, you know what? Maybe something crazier happens. Maybe they tell you it's their birthday too. All right? Hey, that'd be pretty interesting. And you know what? Maybe nobody else is in the market for strange plants nobody's seen before. So maybe they close up shop. Maybe it's a mom and pop that they own and they can do that. All right? And maybe they just so happen to join you on this journey, all right? And so that said, that's great because as I hear it told, the more people who are involved and focused on the same thing, you're apt to beget greater results. So then there you go. You guys set out there. You've made a new friend ostensibly, so hey, that's great. But you know what? You roll yourself the set of dice there, get going in a direction, going in a time limit. Maybe at the end of this one, you find yourself, that's right, the numbers again, boom, maybe it's 35th Avenue, all right? And maybe you guys are going, this is pretty crazy. Hey, we got our numbers again. That's the same as your address there, if you like. And they're like, yeah, that's pretty nuts, right? And then maybe they notice a plant that you've never seen before. They tell you all about it, all right? And then, hey, maybe the number 8 line pulls up while they're in the middle of their story, all right? Hey, another synchronicity, all right? I would say get on the bus. Maybe one of the two of you, between the two of you, you have perfect change to ride. I think you see where it's going, all right? This the numbers popping up, creeping up in you today, or some particular theme. The universe showing you it's with you on your path. And maybe making a few friends in the bargain. That said, I think you get the idea. So get out there, start stacking up coincidences or synchronicities if you like. I think they're interchangeable. And let the universe blow your hair back, all right? That said, I think you get the idea. So let's get in on with the birthday read. That's why you're here. Your month is March. Your day is the 30th. Your sign is 8 to 10 degrees Aries of the Aries I period specifically. And your quality and element is Cardinal fire. Well, all right. March 30th, the day of uncompromising vision. March 30 people are extremely forward, rarely mitigating the effect they have on others. And for this reason, they can arouse antagonisms and obstacles which stand in the way of their tremendous drive to succeed. They may fail time and again in their endeavors to reach personal or social goals, but remain undaunted. All right? Eventually, this determination makes for success. And though recognition may come late in life or even posthumously, those born on this day are concerned with their image, for they take quite seriously what others think about them. This is particularly evident when denied appreciation, for they openly show their bewilderment and their pain. And such setbacks, however, only build greater resolve. And because March 30 people are only capable of doing things their own way, when they do best as self-employed freelancers, for employees, they are likely to clash with bosses or co-workers. And if they are free to pursue their own personal vision, these conflicts can be avoided. Someone else's dream they find difficult to share, as their mind is one track and their energy usually directed in one line of endeavor only. And March 30 people are very intense. Because relaxation does not come easily to those so driven, they can wear others out with their unflagging energy. And those born on this day can also create emotional difficulties through their childlike and often naive view of things. They are almost always self-taught types. Formal education rarely manages to impart much for them. Fortunately, since they carry such a clear vision of what they wish to do in their heads, they have the inspiration necessary to master whatever technical skills are required to do the job. Having lots of friends is not important to March 30 people. And when they do become successful, the accompanying social contract is rather difficult for them to handle. They may find themselves longing for privacy that they had before recognition, and even regret their achievements. Ultimately, however, they have no choice but to follow their inner drives. And sometimes, in extreme cases, the personality of these driven people becomes so deeply submerged in the flood of their activity that it almost seems that they have become forces personified rather than flesh and blood human beings. Their true existence lies in their work. In relationships, those born on this day can be extremely demanding. Those attracted to or already involved with a March 30 person had better be prepared for almost anything. Matching their energy output is indeed difficult. And perhaps the best mate for them is an empowered but undemanding person, one who can appeal to their imagination. But such a mate must also be quite unusual, even unique, to maintain their interest over time. Furthermore, those born on this day may not always be the best at dealing with the success enjoyed by a mate and can be prone to projecting their own desires on their partner. And although March 30 people are very complex emotionally, they are loyal in their own way, and they usually do their best to hang in there for their family and their friends, at least as much as their driven personalities will allow. Well, all right, I would say this is a pretty well-rounded birthday breakdown. And a lot of times they don't dive into the relationship aspects, or they might just focus in on the pursuits there and then expand out in that particular theme, just how they realize such things. I would say they kind of did that in no small part with everything here. So it's nice to see a well-rounded birthday read. That said, I'd like to provide a little bit of a commentary on what we just read. So let's dive in, all right, and see where maybe you match up with other people born in the period. Maybe the book at large, too. Let's just find out. Here we go. March 30, the day of uncompromising vision. You're said to be extremely forward individuals who are so driven to succeed in your pursuits, you will continue on doggedly, even if you repeatedly fail. And the reading claims you may arouse antagonisms in this process, considering the energy with which you project, or as hot, heavy, and ostensibly intense as you come on in your your path there, or your push, I wrote here, all right? Antagonism, that is a rather common occurrence in this period. But for you, I would say it manifests in a manner that's rather understandable, all right? Because you're intense, all right? They may not be able to deal with that so much. And I bring this up because many other people born in this period, it's the other way around, all right? They're very rather modest or unassuming individuals in a lot of cases, and as they have a particular brand of drive all their own. But they still garner this antagonism from others, or pretty interestingly. Ostensibly, it's out of jealousy because other people they just can't match that power, and you know what? They're a little bit jealous. Like I said, there's some envy baked in there. But unlike others in this period, however, the reading claims there is a large concern, not just for your image, but what others think of you, all right? And rejections in this realm, that can be a great cause of pain from the sounds of it. But apparently, it also further cements your commitment to your cause. So, you know what? There's some good and some bad in there, sounds like. You're also said to be highly individualistic for another period similarity, but you're being apt to clash with others if you aren't driving after your own dreams. That's a trait that's largely your own, all right? Which also extends to not just your intensity and apparent inability to relax, but the shared period traits of child naivete and creating emotional difficulty. For others, it usually endears them to such people and makes them friends. But for you, a little bit different from the sounds of it. So, you know, there's a lot of similarities running through this period, and it just takes on different forms for everybody, pretty interestingly. That said, technical mastery is another commonality, but clarity of vision hasn't been mentioned as the inspiration for others. That's just for you from the sounds of it. Success is also another outlier for you, as the resulting popularity from as much may cause thoughts of regret and longing for the times before. All right, pretty interesting. This hasn't come up before. This also extends to this extreme element of becoming a force for your own work, personified rather than a human being. All right, especially if you resign yourself completely to your efforts. All right. And so that may be a key dynamic to consider if you're out there on the fence about committing to some kind of a passion, if you like. Pretty interesting thing to think about. That being said, this demanding relationship aspect, that's pretty common for the period. All right. So also people not really concerned about making friends and such. They're just focused on the goal or their passions, their pursuits. pretty common here. But this recommendation of who to look for in a mate is a novel recommendation. It hasn't been coming up in this particular period here. So it's pretty interesting that they put this down in here. I'm sure that that would have been appreciated for the others as well. But you're also said to be loyal friends in your own particular way. And that also runs true with the other people born in the Aries I period. So, like I said, really well rounded out. This period has really taken me by surprise with this sweeping amount of commonalities. So it's been kind of hard to write the notes in no small regard. But again, you have your own brand, your own trademark, so we can still expand out from there. That said, that's been what I had to say about the breakdown. Let's move on to your numbers and your planets. That's right, let's get into a little astrology and numerology. All right, those born on the 30th of the month are ruled by the number 3, as 3 plus 0 equals 3, and by the expansive planet Jupiter. And those ruled by the number 3 are often ambitious and sometimes even dictatorial. However, since we have seen that March 30 people can arouse antagonisms in others, the expansive Jupiterian drive coupled with the direct Mars energy of Aries can result in frustration, a prime source of mental or physical illness. If despite all obstacles those born on this day do manage to succeed in reaching the heights, they have to beware of becoming autocratic. All right, this was a highly personalized numbers and planets for you today. Yeah, a little bit of boilerplate stuff with the planets there, but it's a pretty interesting dynamic that came to the fore, all told. That said, another interesting aspect here with this particular period, none of the planets have been doing what you would expect, all right? So let's kind of keep that in mind as we dive in with what I had to say about it. Though I might have just burned down a lot of my copy. Let's see here. All right, so the number 3 in the expansive planet Jupiter, which in other parts of the book is said to be jovial, optimistic, lucky, and impart this expansive philosophical view and a dynamic outlook. The latter qualities of which I would argue are pretty well apparent in the breakdown. Expansive view, philosophical outlook, all right? You're out there trying to figure out your own way of getting on. I would say that lines up nicely, all right? But there does seem to be a lack of optimism, joviality, if that's a word. And so I'd say that Mars, with its god of warlike aggression and adventurous ambition, may be to blame for that, all right? I would argue both planets have a lot of similar drivers, pushing people forward to get to the top, all right? But it probably comes at a contrast of energies there, especially if frustration is set to result from this particular coupling. So it's probably just different flavors, in the same group that don't necessarily pair particularly well, if we were to throw a food metaphor on it. Hence, this dictatorial nature may manifest in tandem with the likes of mental fatigue and physical illness. All right. That said, like I mentioned before, all the planetary influences this period have been bucking typical ascribed conventions. So it's hard to kind of see why things aren't really making sense. For you, I would say this one seems to make the most sense of all of them in the period here. So there you got that going for you. So Mars is a zodiac ruler, considering it's the ruler of Aries. It may just really be shaking and heating things up in really weird ways. I don't know who's to say. It's still the beginning of the Aries period, so I might be in for some rude awakenings here as we advance on. That said, that's what I'd say about your numbers and your planets. Hope we imparted just a little bit more information than the book did, even though I got all that from the book in my own way. So that said, let's move on to your tarot. That's right, one of the more eclectic of the New Age metaphysical ideologies. But hey, we can just leave it here in the book. We don't have to take it home with us and start dealing out the cards to say predict our future or however they're used. But a lot of times these things line up with the breakdown in surprising ways. So let's dive into it, see what we see, and then we just leave it here in the books. Let's get into it here. The third card of the major arcana is the Empress, who symbolizes creative intelligence. She is the perfect woman, the ultra-feminine Mother Earth nurturer, who is our dreams made real, our hopes and aspirations embodied, and this card represents positive traits of charm, grace, and unconditional love, and negative traits of vanity, affectation, and intolerance for imperfection. All right. That said, on its face, I would say this particular card didn't really seem to line up. It's a bit of a copy paste job. Sometimes they'll button it with a little bit of something for the person on the day to say this lines up in this way, or it stands as an example of what they should strive for. None of that here for you today. Let's see if I can pick up some of the slack, give you something else to think about here. All right. The Empress for creative intelligence, hopes and dreams made manifest. All right. I would say that lines up, all right, particularly well, which I would argue sounds like you in a strong possession of, or at least in possession of the wherewithal to get to that place if you don't presently possess it. All right, you just got to get the creative intelligence developed or drilled down upon so that you can figure out your pursuit or your line or drive. All right, but with positives of charm, grace, and unconditional love, I don't know that I necessarily saw that in the breakdown on its face because you're very reserved. You're not necessarily looking for friendships to develop those aspects there. The social dynamics probably a little atrophied in that respect. So where's the charm? Where's the unconditional love? I don't know who's to say. It just doesn't necessarily speak to it on its face. So the best case for that wasn't necessarily made. At least in the outward social sense, I would say. But maybe for yourself and your pursuits, if we kind of shift our perspective there, I would say that lines up nicely. You've got charm, grace, and what was the other one? Unconditional love for your pursuits. I would say it lines up in those respects. It's just an interesting perspective we got to take to figure it out. That said, like I mentioned before, sometimes these cards are said to be ideal examples for the person born on the day to live up to. All right, so that's something to consider. All right, especially if you want to expand your social circle out and see if it helps you improve the things you're struggling with. Maybe you can just dive in on the charm that you didn't know you have, or the unconditional love. I don't know. Or take the energy you put into your passions and kind of divert it or pivot it just for that particular case, I would say. All right, because you got it in you, it sounds like. You just got to change the focus in certain circumstances. But with negatives of vanity, affectation, or what you might call false put on appearances, all right, kind of fake and flaky kind of appearances there for affectation. I mean, I would say that applies if you reach this height of success and you really lean in on it, all right, or if you're the boss and you have such high regard for your particular projects, and maybe other people don't think so, and so then this autocratic thing kind of drops in. Who's to say? But I can see him lining up in that particular specific regard. But it seems very isolated. But intolerance for imperfection too, I would say that probably lines up. If you're so dedicated to your cause, it probably has to be perfect, even though they didn't mention as much. But based on the breakdown, I would say this lines up in quite a few different ways. Though we do kind of have to step outside the direct interpretation of as much and kind of think about how it applies. So I don't necessarily think it was, say, the puzzle piece to the grander picture being slammed in, not the appropriate piece. I thought it fit rather nicely. It's just like one of those, if you're doing a picture of clouds, you don't quite know where it goes, all right? So kind of harder to find. That said, that's been your tarot. Let's move on to your health. All right, let's get into it here. Stress is the principal cause of ill health for those born on March 30. It is difficult for them to find respite from their passions, which can occupy every instant of their waking life. Medications may be of limited use occasionally, but addiction is an ever-present danger. Headaches, eye aches, and toothaches are all common for the earnest individuals born on this day. Soothing homeopathic tonics, baths, massages, and herbal teas may be useful for their calming effects. Physicians' warnings against lifestyles threatening heart attacks, ulcers, or other stress-related diseases may fall on deaf ears with March 30 patients. Smoking and the drinking of coffee and alcohol should be avoided, but too often are a part of their lifestyle and hard for them to give up. And when March 30 people cook for themselves, they tend to eat on the run or settle for fast foods, which they do well to strengthen their interest in cooking. And those fortunate enough to have their meals prepared for them should take time out to enjoy the efforts of the chef. All right, turn on some of that charm if you like. All right, that said, what I would say about the health, pretty specific, personalized. health entry for you here today. Again, this period they've been shaking things up a little bit with regard to the boilerplate and how it's presented. Let's dive into why I say that, all right? So, stress is the primary source of ill health. You don't say. I would say we probably could have guessed it as much, all right? Breaks from your passions are maybe something to be considered, or your efforts and your drives, all right? And which probably sounds unreasonable to someone so committed, all right? This does come up on occasion in this period, so you're not alone in this respect. So also, book writ large, stress presents, all right? So you aren't alone. Other addictions are also warned about, to say, drugs if you like, if medications aren't working. So again, pretty common that comes up in stress-related issues. But the headache and toothache that they warned about, that's something very specific to this particular period. And it hasn't actually been coming up all too often, just onesie-twosies. But it also tends to be pigeonholed with tooth decay also, surprisingly. And I'm assuming that pops up because the Aries body areas of the brain, the head, and the spinal area, the spinal cord, if you like. I think they wrote spinal system in the book, so I'm getting a little bit confused to myself. But tooth decay in there. So mind you brushing your teeth, all right? And seeing your dentist. Make sure you're taking care of the cavities and such. What else do we have here? Cigarettes, alcohol, and coffee, they recommend avoiding if you can. That's pretty much baked in with the people who are dedicated to a cause. And Capricorn, they got that all the time, if I remember correctly, because those folks were dedicated, let me tell you. What else do we have here? This extends to the nutrition in food. Very common for folks in this period to just kind of not lend much concern to that. There was one particular person who said they have to be dragged to the table to force them to eat. All right, and they didn't care about their health in the least. All right, neglectful of it, if I remember. So mind that you have that baked in there too, even if it's not nearly as extreme as that other individual. No specific diet is mentioned. This is also common. A lot of these days will pop up here normally. Let's say specific foods to focus on eating. I think when Mars comes into the paradigm there, it kind of goes by the wayside. They can kind of take in whatever they like. So to some extent, kind of part and parcel with these particular planets that have come up for the period, and also for a Mars-Jupiter day. You can't be bothered to eat sometimes, like they said. Also, no exercise is mentioned here, when normally the book recommends very specific kinds of exercises or approaches to as much. The quality of it, if you like. Normally with a Mars day, it's vigorous. Try to excise that aggression and that God of War-like energy. But not all the time. Well, I would say if Jupiter's in the mix, hey, it might just affect you in that way too, all right? It might benefit you to go vigorous. But another theme that's come up this period, people are very accident prone, surprisingly. So they tell them not to go vigorous because they might go too committed with the exercise and then hurt themselves. So be mindful of yourself, cultivate some self-awareness, and figure out where you lie there, I would say. That said, also give your compliments to the chef when somebody's out there preparing your meals, all right? Taking that burden off your plate, if you like, and putting down something nice for you. So, in any event, that's been your health. Let's move on to some advice. Here we go. Calm down, it says, all right? Don't be so anxious to explain. Others may understand of themselves. Avoid conflicts and control your strident side. Learn to be diplomatic. Compromise in your dealings with others need not mean compromise of your vision. And don't neglect yourself. All right, very interesting, all right? A little redundant in certain respects here, or maybe you could kind of see that, see the common sense kind of deal. But let's dive into what I had to say about what they said, all right? Calm down, they said, all right? Typical for folks who stress in that respect, all right? Though it probably stresses you out to be told as much, all right? Don't have to be told, is what I would say, right? Don't have to be told to calm down. Do it on your own, all right? Take your homeopathic, tonic, herbal baths, if you like, all right? 4 birds, 1 bath, all right? Don't be anxious to explain. Others are apt to understand themselves, though they wrote it in kind of a weird way, of themselves. I wasn't quite sure what the meaning of that was. Could have been a typo. Regardless, what did I have to say about that? Don't know what to make of this outside of openly showing your plans to folks, or your pain also, kind of dropping the walls, letting folks in. Bewilderment at being denied appreciation in that respect. All right, so if you make this success there, like they said in the breakdown. What else here? But perhaps you don't pick up on people understanding what you're trying to talk about or what's going on in your head, and it causes you stress, all right? So, or undue social tension. Maybe get a little more autocratic because you don't think they're understanding where you're coming from. This came up with Capricorn a lot. They wouldn't tell folks what was going on in their heads. It's like you got to drop the wall. You got to explain yourself a little bit, but also kind of see if people are picking it up and understand that they might just understand it, all right? And kind of like I'm doing right now, over explaining it, all right? We're getting on the nose here. But what does it say here? That might cause you some stress, social tension. Let go a bit, maybe, is what I had to say here, and I'll try to go in with that bit of information or that advice there for myself. They also said avoid conflicts, control your strident nature, and your more extreme side. Try to let that go a little bit. Cultivating diplomacy is also a huge recommendation for the period. All right, so you aren't being singled out in that respect. Compromising your dealings doesn't have to mean compromising your vision. All right, it's interesting, perhaps common source of conflict. So don't go right to the extreme interpretation of people trying to maybe wreck your dreams. All right, just maybe pull it back a little bit, hear what they have to say, even if you know you're not going to go with the information. I would say that's the diplomatic approach, letting them kind of expound on what they're trying to think about, even if you know the answer is going to be no. And then maybe just kind of tell them, yeah, I hear what you're saying. I just don't think that's going to work. But hey, let's hear some other ideas. Change the subject maybe, all right? But I would also say listen, give them their due time, consideration. Don't just tell them everything, and then you'll endanger yourselves to them. I probably the wrong word, but you'll endear yourself to them in respect, and that's diplomatic. And hey, you know what? You might have got an antagonist out of it if you hadn't have done that. If you had just flatly said no and then left it at that, hey, those folks are going to walk away a little bit perturbed. All right, so yeah, listen to folks. All right, and hey, you know what? You might learn something. Who's to say? All right. What else did they have to say here? Take care of yourself. All right. Yeah, it sounds like we might do that. I take care of myself. Hey, maybe you don't. You know what? The common theme in the book is cultivating self-awareness. So sometimes we've got to take a step back, assess ourselves, figure out what we're doing, how we react in certain situations, make a note of it, and then try to adjust. It can take years, because I know sometimes I'll have that knee-jerk reaction after, like, why did I do that? I should have recognized that's a moment that I needed to calm down, or whatever the case. So take that under advisement, I would say, or at least think about it. All right, that said, that's been your advice. Let's move on to your meditation. That's right, it's your birthday, you get something to think about. All right, here we go, your meditation. Adults grow up to be children. Oh, very interesting, very interesting. I don't necessarily know how that lines up with you, but hey, maybe I'm being a little myopic today. Here we go. Once again, adults grow up to be children. All right, there's your meditation in the can there, if you like. I'd give you an interpretation if I had one. Actually, I wouldn't, all right? I like to say if I have an interpretation, let folks know I have one. But then, you know what, I don't inform them of as much. Because you know what, if I threw my spin on it, I like to think it wouldn't do you much good with the meditation there. So that's just for you on your birthday. That said, let's move on to your strengths and your weaknesses. That's right. Let's see, we got the girth and we otherwise a little more atrophied. All right, here we go. Your strengths, you're driving, you're energetic, and you're a visionary. All right, but your weaknesses, let's see what those can be. Yeah, let's see if anything lines up from the breakdown. You're stressed. We knew that one. You're isolated. Don't know that we saw that one so much, but maybe if we read between the lines a little bit. And you're rebellious. All right, interesting. Again, another one we had to see by reading between the lines. Oftentimes I like to say our strengths are going to help us improve upon our weaknesses, but I also like to make the case that our weaknesses can also be strengths. It just depends on the situation and how we use them. I think it was a couple of months back, there was a day that popped up with impulsive as a strength. Very next day it was a weakness. So it got me thinking on that track. How can there be such a shift in dynamic just between one day separated? All right, let's try to do the work here. You're driving. All right, how's that going to help you with your weaknesses? You know what? You're going to push after them. All right, it's going to always be active towards improving on whatever deficit is that you've identified. energetic. You got the wherewithal to continue on, even with that drive. Some folks are driven, they get nothing done, all right, because they don't have any energy, all right? I would say that's not going to be an issue for you in that respect, all right? That's huge. Not everybody's got energy, as it turns out. You're also a visionary. You're going to see things other people don't see, captivating ways of solving your problems, all right? And I don't know, sometimes there's just people, they're very myopic. They don't see other things outside of that narrow course. And, you know, so if you've got that full range of view, perfect, all right? And you're also apt to maybe have a little bit of that creative intelligence that the old Empress tarot card was said to impart, all right? So you're going to think of innovative ways to improve upon your weaknesses. That said, what's the case to be made for your weaknesses being strengths? Being stressed, if you like. Hey, you know you have that gear to overcommit, if you like. You know you're going to be able to get things done. I would also say if you know you're stressed, you identify those things, you can start to notice the things in your path that are going to do it to you, and hence you can then avoid it. It's kind of a, what do we call it? I don't know, a self-awareness, if you like, all right? So it's a strength in that respect. If you know you get stressed out in certain circumstances, now I know how I can curb that by avoiding or adjusting. But yeah, also stress, like I said, you know you can go that extra mile to where your body starts to fall apart so that you can get after the endeavor. So I would say if you got an extreme case, I know I can go there. All right, it is a strength. But I also know that it's going to put other people back on their heels. So maybe in that respect, I would say if you need to put people back on their heels, you know how to do it. All right. I don't know if that's the most connected thing, but hopefully you took something from that. That said, you're isolated too. This is a very common theme for this particular period, as it turns out. And I say it's a strength because you're able to put the walls up, focus in on what you need to get done. All right. But again, something said that people need to drop and be pretty proactive about opening up for things, all right? So not being isolated, if you like. Interestingly, I didn't necessarily see this pop up too much in the breakdown. Again, something between the lines. So a strength and respect that you can put the walls up and drill down. All right, but rebellious, how is that a strength? I can see how it's a bad look. People always kind of bucking convention. People get a little bit frustrated with that, or maybe a lot of bit frustrated. Who's to say? But how is it a strength? All right, you know what? You can get out there and do the unexpected stuff. All right, I would say that captivates interest, which might bring people into your work. All right, and also people like rebels. All right, yes they do. All right, but they also don't like them at a certain point. So you're gonna have to figure out that particular balance. All right, and a lot of people, they don't have that particular gear, so you've got a gear other folks don't have. That can be a strength because it adds a certain amount of character to your life, all right? I would also say it's going to give you another piece of that creative intelligence, another different way of thinking outside the box. Defying convention, all right? Keeps things dynamic versus static. So a huge strength, I would say. But again, used in inappropriate doses, huge weakness, bad look, all right? That said, your strengths and your weaknesses having been conveyed, I often like to say don't get rid of your weaknesses altogether for things that you want to improve upon completely, because I think they're a big part of who we are, all right? Don't know if I made the best case, but you get the idea. So that said, your strengths and weaknesses having been gone over, let's move on to those born on this day and see who shares your company, all right? Which can be an interesting lottery to see. That said, I also like to use as an opportunity to kind of bring up the idea of chasing after a passion. And this period's been tough to even say that because so many people are driven after a passion just baked in to the breakdown. But I bring it up because a lot of times I get out in the world and meet folks who don't have that in their life. They just have the 9-to-5 job to get after, and then they get home and they're rallying for the next day. And I argue that they just don't have something that makes life fulfilling in that respect, because they would probably get into a different line of work if they did put the energy and the time into figuring that out. And I think that's the huge obstacle, actually, is just people haven't put in the time to figure that out. Because it takes time and energy, I would argue, sometimes to figure out what we even like, let alone a passion. But I would argue the folks here in Aries, Aries I period specifically, sounds like they got that figured out, just baked into the bargain. All right. So that said, regardless of whether you got a passion or not, so the transition's getting me here. Regardless of whether you have a passion or not, that's the focus here. Because if you don't, hopefully I can put the bug in your ear to start figuring that out. And maybe these folks can serve as an example. That's the point here. Let's get the ball rolling already. All right, here we go. Vincent van Gogh, or Go if you're not Dutch. All right, he was a Dutch painter, a missionary to Belgian miners, it says. Interesting, I didn't know that part. Creative period of less than 10 years, and shot himself in a cornfield at age 37. A lot of us may know some of those other things. I didn't know he was a, a missionary to Belgian miners, all right? miners, miners, all right? With the pickaxes there. Okay, anyway, moving on. We also have Francisco de Goya, a Spanish artist, principal court painter, and etches depicting nightmarish and political images. Interesting. Let's see how many more artists fall in line here. We also have Warren Beatty, artist of sorts there, a film actor, director of the film Reds. We also have Eric Clapton, the blues rock guitarist, singer, songwriter. Paul Verlaine, a French 19th century symbolist poet, imprisoned for shooting lover Rimbaud in the knee. All right, we also have Sean O'Casey, an Irish playwright. Astrid Gilberto, a Brazilian bossa nova singer. We also have Frankie Lane, a singer. Also Anna Sewell, or Sewell perhaps, a British 19th century writer, and the artists are really lining up here. We have Melanie Klein, an Austrian child psychiatrist, the first one that wasn't an artist ostensibly, though they might have painted in their off time. Who else do we have here? Dennis Etchison, a horror writer. First one I think that's been mentioned in the book, surprisingly. Jerry Lucas, a basketball player. NBA Rookie of the Year, it says. 9th all-time rebounder, a coach, writer, and a TV educator. We also have Mary W. Calkins, a 19th, 20th century psychologist, philosopher, and an educator. A little bit of Jupiter coming into the chat there with that one. Naomi Sims, a model and a writer. Richard Helms, CIA director for 7 years. We also have McGeorge Bundy, assistant for the National Security Affairs. We also have Francis Pilotry de Rosier, early 18th, 19th century aeronaut. That's the balloons there, I think. And we also have Charles E. Curran, professor of theology, and Ted Heath, British big band leader. And finally, Henry Viscount Hardinge, British field marshal. All right, very interesting. All right, I know it's a big ass tall order to try and take inspiration from other folks' accomplishments, if you like. But again, if I can just put the bug in your ear, if you don't have a passion, help you start stirring the fires to figure that out, then my work here is done. I can't wish for anything else for somebody on their birthday than that. But hopefully you're following the tried and true Aries I through line. You've already got a passion. So if you do, all right, the hat I'm not wearing, well, that's off to you in that respect, all right? Hopefully you just took some entertainment out of finding out who shares your birthday. That said, I butchered some names in there, so let's make up for that on my side of things. Not done a malice, it's just hooked on phonics. Doesn't often work for me with the names there, especially if they're Russian or French, all right, or Polish sometimes. That said, that essentially rounds out your birthday reading, all right? Except to say your season is spring, your sign once again is Aries, of the Aries I period specifically, and your quality and element is Cardinal fire. And if you don't know what any of that means, well, I got some other videos on the channel you might see or dive in with to figure all that out. That said, this has been March 30th, the day of Uncompromising Vision, from The Secret Language of Birthdays by Gary Goldschneider and Use Stelfers. I have an affiliate link for this book down in the description if you're interested in picking up a copy, getting through it quicker than I could for you, going at your own pace if you like. You know, I often like to say this thing makes an excellent coffee table book. I know you're an isolationist, not necessarily apt to drill down on a friend's if we go by what was said in the breakdown, but hey, maybe you need some kind of help if you have company over, and this thing's going to be great at breaking the ice, all right? It's going to do the lion's share of the lifting in that respect, okay? So just check out the affiliate link if you're interested in doing that and supporting the channel in the bargain. That said, book having been relayed, that's not altogether all too important, because like I said at the top, what's important around here, wishing you a happy birthday. So once again, happy birthday, all right? But for everybody else that joined us today, you know, celebrate the birthday, hopefully, ideally. I just want to say thanks for coming in, and I hope you enjoyed yourself and took something of interest from it. Sometimes we can learn stuff from just hearing about other people's plight, if you like. All right, that said, I leave a personal message for the birthday boys and girls down beneath the affiliate link, so check that out if you're interested. But once again, I just want to say happy birthday, okay? And thank you for the pleasure of your time, everybody, and for the birthday boys and girls. Just tell you it was a privilege to celebrate your birthday with you, all right? Get out there. You keep chasing your passions if you got it, but make sure that you're doing the work, figuring out if it's something you really want to pursue, that kind of that success baked in angle. Hey, you know what? Maybe you long for the days before you had it. So maybe think about whether you really want to drill down on becoming successful. Maybe wait for that to happen after you die, who's to say, so that you can get all the enjoyment out of the process and not dealing with the social angle, all right? All right, any event. Once again, I just want to say happy birthday, all right? And take care of yourselves. Maybe calm down a little bit, but don't have people tell you to. Just do it outright and let some of the stress go. Find the enjoyment in what you're doing. I can't stress that enough, all right? There's going to be days where I long for when I was in a period of time where I was longing for the future, but now I'm in the future, longing for the past days. So find the enjoyment of it is what I'm trying to say in the moment. Don't stress, all right? Or maybe do if you got to go that extra mile, all right? So once again, happy birthday. Take care of yourselves.